As we start today, read through Philippians 2 and then go back and pay particular attention to verse 1. Because there is what amounts to a checklist here, isn't there? Where there is partnership in the gospel, you will see these things. So, check. With each item on the list, what does it look like in your experience? Now, I know it says, if you have, in English, and that tends to open up for us a whole world of self-doubt, doesn't it? But what Paul actually wrote in his language was closer to the meaning, since you have. Now, you trust in Jesus for life? Okay, this stuff will be there somewhere, in some form. Now, pause the video and go look for it. Welcome back. You notice the interreliance and the interdependence of everything in verses 1 and 2. Our encouragement comes from being united with Christ. Our comfort from his love. Our fellowship is with the Holy Spirit. Tenderness and compassion take many forms, but neither of them can be performed solo. Paul can't complete his own joy. He needs the Philippians to do it for him. That's partnership for you. You have to rely on the other partners. So, if you are, of necessity, this summer, following these Bible studies on your own, can I suggest that you at least phone a friend and talk about what God is saying to you through this letter? If you have my phone number or my email, by all means get in touch with me, because it won't do to go it alone when our God is all about the team. Before we move on from verses 1 to 4, let's look at verses 2 to 4 in particular. Partnership in the gospel. It's such a powerful thing. What causes such partnership to fall apart and what holds it together? Pause the video and find some answers, and can I suggest that we make those answers as personal as possible? So for instance, partnership falls apart when it comes together, when off we all toddle then. Welcome back. Unity with each other is impossible without total respect for each other. And total respect for each other is impossible without real humility. Because without real humility, we will always consider others. Verse 3, the meaning is actually more like calculate others, inferior to ourselves. Put it another way, if I'm exposing you, my fellow partners, to my selfish ambitions and vain conceits, it'll be because there has been a serious error in my calculations. My calculations about me and my value, about you and yours, and most importantly, about Jesus. So what we'll do now is read from Philippians 2, verses 5 to 11, about the only attitude that will preserve that partnership in the gospel. And then before we read those verses again, just a reminder. 1, the Roman Empire, like our world, despised real humility. 2, let's read what Jesus taught his disciples in Mark 10, verses 42 to 45. And finally, let's read again Philippians 2, 5 to 11. And read alongside it John chapter 13, verses 3 to 17. How many parallels can you find between what is said in Philippians and what is happening there in John's Gospel? Welcome back. So, at centre of all our calculations about ourselves and others, this. Jesus, verse 6, didn't see his status, equality with God, in terms of taking but of giving. It wasn't about, verse 7, filling himself up but emptying himself out. In verse 8, being found in appearance doesn't mean he rather looked like, but he had the essential nature and character of a man, i.e., this is what a real man does. Verses 9 to 11 describe God's vindication of this human life, his super exaltation, verse 9. Think what Jesus says in Matthew 28:18. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Through, of course, which we were all brought into this partnership with the gospel. Our knee bowed, our tongue confessed Jesus Christ is Lord. So what? A few words about verses 12 to 18. When it says in verse 12, work out your salvation with fear and trembling, that doesn't mean earn your way to heaven or be terrified lest we lose our personal salvation. It's a command to the church. We have been entrusted by him with his precious plan and purposes with each other. We should be fearful not to mess up this beautiful work of his and let him down. Verse 15 has that note again of blamelessness that we noticed from chapter 1 verse 10. Notice in verse 16 the image of the athlete again, someone who will have left it all out there at the end of the race, as they say. Someone who has emptied himself out, verse 17, in this cause with no regrets, and who says in consequence, follow me, copy me, effectively, verse 18. For the last pause the video moment, read through verses 19 to 30 and spot how Paul, in his thinking about his companions and their travel plans, shows the same attitude as that of Christ. How is he calculating their needs as more important than his? How is he emptying himself on their behalf? How is he identifying himself with them? Off we all toddle. And welcome back. I'll just say that we often hear, if you were in my situation, I'd like to see you have the same attitude as that of Christ. But the fact is that both Paul and Epaphroditus were in situations that were made for selfishness and self-pity. They refused the temptation and calculated others better than themselves. Enough. You want more to think about? What kind of fear and trembling is appropriate among people in partnership in the gospel, and what kind is inappropriate? Read Matthew 25, 14 to 30. Or you could pick one of the gospels and look for the ways in which Jesus humbled himself. Read Deuteronomy 32, 5, Matthew 17, 17, Acts 2, 43, 13, 10 and 20, 30, and think about what it meant then and now to shine like stars in a crooked and depraved generation. And if you have been, thank you for taking